Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to you all. I'd like to also, from the onset, express our gratitude to the AfriFood Links project and the community of practice for giving us this opportunity to share with you, as Professor Holsworth indicated, how food environment could be used as an entry point in our bid to transform our food systems. Um, Today, I do have a disclaimer that has nothing to do with what I usually disclose, conflict of interest. It has to do with my health status. I'm battling a very terrible cold. And so if I appear disoriented, it has nothing to do with the timing here. Although it's 4 a.m. here, it has everything to do with my cold. And so, yeah, please forgive me. 1 second. Yes, so Michelle presented 4 questions. So our marching orders were to address those 4 questions. She has um, ably delivered on the first two. I would take the third and then the fourth. And as you saw from her presentation, the other questions were which research method can be used to investigate different components of our food's environment. And by research methods here, I wouldn't delve into methodology. I would just focus on the approaches that we can use to investigate the different components of the food environment as presented to you by Michelle. Um, I'm very much aware this slide is not very visible, but that which you have to pay attention to are the sources that are listed at the bottom. And so, beginning with the US National Collaborative on Child Obesity Research, we usually refer to it as NCORE. And then a review also done by Bianca Cadusi, published in 2021, reviewed the different food environment research approaches or method. It's actually very useful. And then in 2023, Christina, Michelle, and I contributed to this work where we looked at contemporary food environment research methods that make use of, photography approaches or participatory photography approaches. So that's another resource. And then one of the very popular, approaches, the Informers Network, does have a number of models that can be applied to investigate, food environment or to measure different aspects of food environment, but also apply that in policy. So these are resources that I think those who are not very familiar with the approaches used in food environment could make use of, and they are very useful. From the NCORE, food environment could be organized into domains. And I'm presenting 3 of the domains here. If you look at the physical food environment, uh, there are a number of, subdomains. And then each subdomain does have approaches that can be used or measures that can be used. What I seek to do is to quickly run through these domains and then the measures. Like I said, I wouldn't delve into the methodology today. And so if you begin with the physical food environment, these focuses on measures to assess and provide answers to questions such as this. Where can people obtain food or particular types of food in a given area? And so approaches including, geospatial measures. You can use GIS to then assess one, the number, the location, but also the density of food outlets. And outlets here would include stores, grocery stores, convenience stores, corner stores, but also restaurants. So that is one approach that is commonly used. Not only do we just measure where they are located, but we also do that in a relational manner. How far is it from home? How far is it from, settings where children gather, schools, community venues? Um, yeah. And then two, uh, it also assesses or measures what is within the outlet that you have mapped. You have done mapping and you know there's a restaurant here, there's a convenience store here, but you don't go inside to see what is being stocked. You haven't completed your job. And so this approach goes further to look at what is within the outlets. So outlets, like I said, could be stores or restaurants. And then what foods are then available? What food are promoted or marketed or advertised? And what are their prices? And so you see the physical food environment, yes, this is just one of the approaches that can be used. Uh, Let me quickly run through GIS. So as I already noted, so data on the existence of food outlet in a given geographic area can be then determined using several approaches. So even within the GIS, there are multiple approaches. Some of the approaches Michelle presented in the work that we did in Ghana and Kenya. And so you can have trained data collectors document the existence of, stores or restaurants using logs or photographs. These two approaches are usually referred to as the ground truthing. But apart from doing it yourself as researchers, you could also use secondary data. And so health data, tax data of licensing data, documenting the existence of food outlets, that say people or say food to the public. Beyond that, you could even use a third approach where the data has been collected by a commercial entity, and sometimes these are bots. So you can buy that data and then use that data to tell where a restaurant is located, where an outlet is located, and sometimes what they sell. So these different domains that I'm going to be talking to you about, I could present an example for each one of them, but in the interest of time, I've just picked two. And so one example for this fiscal food environment domain focusing on GIS is what I'm presenting here. What we did in Ghana was to look at how prevalent marketing or advertising or promotion of unhealthy diets were uh, in close proximity to schools. And so we went out and mapped all the adverts that were there, how many of them were of food, and how close they were to schools. So you can see here a black triangle represents a school, a green triangle represents a healthy food advert, and then a red triangle represents an unhealthy food advert. You could see here, this could be an example of, a food desert kind of, where you have the unhealthy food advert, overwhelming the healthier food advert. And not only that, they were in very close proximity to schools. And this has implications. Okay. So that is how GIS, just one way GIS could be used. Within the physical food environment, we can also do what we call observational scans or observational assessments or inventory. And this could be done in stores, it could be done in restaurants, it could be done at home or in homes. So in stores, we document information such as the types of food that are available in those stores. Are they fresh fruit and vegetables relative to, unhealthy ultra-processed food? Uh, the amount of shelf space or counter space that is dedicated to different kinds of food. How are they placed? Where are they located? Is it at the checkout area, at the entrance, or somewhere in the corner hidden, within the supermarket or store? All these are assets. And again, this is the second example that I want to give you from the work that we did in Ghana. What we did here was to go to modern retail outlet, including supermarket in Greater Accra region, and meticulously measure the shelf area that is used for food. And beyond measuring that, we went ahead and then measured the amount of the shelf area dedicated to healthy food compared to unhealthy food. And here you see the finding here. For every 1 meter squared that these modern retail outlet dedicated to healthy food, you had 6 meters squared dedicated to unhealthy food. So again, observational counts. That is just an example. You could also do this in restaurant where you document information such as types of food products that are available for dining or to go or takeaway, as we say it in Ghana. Presence of drive-throughs, and these days they are just multiplying in our cities. Restaurant size and eating capacity and so on and so forth. These are measured as part of the physical food environment assessment. In homes, you could look at, you know, an inventory or a log of the listing of all food and beverages that are available, and then the presence of specific, food in home, such as are there fruit and vegetables, are there sweets, so on and so forth. That can be done at home. And so that is the physical food environment. We can do something similar for the social food environment, but I don't have a lot of time, so I'll just run through this quickly. Here, you could look at social support or role modeling. You could look at practices and rules about eating behavior at home. You could also look at parenting, practices and family rules with respect to measurement or measures or approaches for assessing food environment, focusing on the social, environment. I would have to move a little bit, quickly. So I'll just, present this of the many things that I could talk about within the social food environment, parenting practices and rules around mealtime and here at home. And here, so you can assess caregivers and parenting practices around food and mealtime. And this is done typically with surveys or questionnaires, but you could also observe. There are times when even technology cameras are tagged to human beings or stationed at home or those places to record, but there are concerns about intrusion but also social desirability. Once a family knows that there's a camera set there and it's being recorded for this use, they could modify their behavior. With respect to intrusion, some of our colleagues had their study terminated because people misunderstood why cameras were being tagged to kids. Okay. uh, I'll skip this. That's the parenting practices I talked about. Policies. So rules about eating. Can you stock sugar sweetened beverages at home? Can kids have it at will? All these are assessed as part of the social food environment. Then quickly, the person-centered environment. Again, here you could assess individuals' perceptions of their physical food environment, their perceptions of their social food environment. And usually the good thing is that the approaches that we use and the approaches that Professor Ho has presented, we can use same approaches for the, social food environment, physical food environment, and then the person-centered. Yes. And so these are different approaches that can be used, but I want to move on to talk about other approaches that we can use, not specific to a domain, but across, domains. So you can use quantitative designs, you can use qualitative designs, focus group discussions, photo voice that, Professor Holfer talked about, but also photo, elicitations. And these help elucidate how people engage with their food environment or perceive and navigate, their food environment. You can use mixed method approaches, longitudinal even studies that are driven by theory. So theory of change frameworks are used. Things can get really complex in the approaches that we use to study food environment. I talked about the informal approaches earlier. Even preceding that, the NEMS, the Nutrition Environment Measures Survey can be used. But the recommendation here is you don't have a single method that is appropriate for all the dimensions of the food environment. And so it's recommended that we do a combination of the multiple approaches in a given setting. We don't do only GIS and then yeah, you say that is done. A combination of GIS based mapping with the structured audit I talked about, pricing information, qualitative engagement is would yield the most appropriate and comprehensive data. Again, beyond the domains and then across the domains, we can use the social ecological framework that Professor Michel presented earlier. So what you see here, this is the social ecological framework that, summarizes the many factors that influence people's, dietary behavior. And we have actually presented, we have leveraged this to inform the approaches that we use in our food environment assessment in Ghana and Kenya. And so here at the social environment, such approaches as photo voice, in-depth qualitative interviews, mapping social networks can be used. At the fiscal food environment, the methods that I talked to you about can be applied here. And even beyond that, the macro policy level environment. So if you take the INFORMAS method, food epi, for example, or multi-criteria mapping, all these are approaches that can be used. Um, we at the Africa Food Environment Research Network, following a deliberative, engagement in 2022, came out with a set of research priorities that African countries should focus on if they are interested in researching, understanding, and improving their food environment. And that which I want to emphasize here are the approaches, some of the approaches. For example, making sure that we look at things that are driving, but also things that would present our solutions. And so understanding people's lived experiences, school food environment, city level solutions, community participation, fiscal and financial access. So when we are designing approaches to measure or assess our food environment, we should pay attention to some of this. Uh, the rest of the time that is left, I would use that to address the second question, which is what policies and interventions can be leveraged to improve our food environments. And so again, going back to the socio-ecological framework that Professor Holmes presented, uh, we can have interventions that have been trialed, tested, proven to be effective at the different level of the socio-ecological framework, either targeting individuals, targeting the social environment, or the fiscal environment. So you can see here at the social environment, you can look at interventions that involve, influencers, interventions targeting existing, peer groups. You can look at interventions at the family level, shopping, cooking interventions. But you could also have interventions directly, focusing on improving the physical food environment. And so sanitation, Michelle talked about some of the factors that influence what people choose to eat in Ghana and Kenya. Sanitation is a key issue. And so you could have interventions focusing on that. And then at the macro level, she talked about also, policy interventions. So subsidies on healthy food, taxation of unhealthy food, banning, advertisement or sale of, unhealthy food within certain jurisdiction. And those are all kinds of interventions. The Informants Network did map, a suite of policy interventions that could be applied in this regard. And so you can see food composition interventions, labeling interventions, promotion or marketing intervention, food provisioning. And so a group of policies. But they also note that those policies alone are not, sufficient. They are necessary but not sufficient. You need enabling environment. They refer to some of them as what infrastructural support. You need leadership. You need governance, monitoring and intelligence, funding and resources are needed. And so until we have gotten all these put in place, then we can be confident of improving our food environment. I just want to stress that one policy intervention alone is not sufficient. The nourishing framework developed by the World Cancer Research Foundation, classified such actions into domains, as you can see here. Some focusing on labeling, retail environment, advertising, information, very similar to the Informas framework that I talked to you about. Uh, and so we have, leverage those existing frameworks, existing, guidelines, existing proposals or policies, and have argued that it is very possible for these food environment policies to be applied anywhere in the world, including Africa, and make unhealthy food unattractive and unavailable. And what we said is that for this to happen, we need our governments to implement comprehensive policy measures. Like I said, not one policy. It has to be a mix of low agency and high agency policy interventions that would seek to inform and empower, guide and influence, but also incentivize consumption of healthier food or production of same, and discourage or restrict production and consumption of unhealthy food. And once that is done, we are confident that will lead to food environment actors making immediate or strategic actions that eventually would lead to reduce availability, reduce accessibility, and consumption of unhealthy food. WHO earlier noted that yes, they agree with this, but they went a step further to emphasize that if it is possible for you to kill multiple birds with a single stone, better do that and don't waste your stones. So they came out with what they refer to as double duty actions. So you have interventions that can address undernutrition, but also overweight and obesity. At the same time, prioritize that over interventions that focuses on only undernutrition and say obesity, overweight. Following the Food Systems Summit, they consolidated all these and then came out with what they refer to as food systems priority policies. And those are the policies I'm talking to you about today. Restricting marketing of unhealthy food, especially those targeting children, nutrition labeling, front of pack labeling, for example, public food procurement and service policies. And this is also like a theory of change as to how implementing those policies can eventually lead to improved nutrition and health. They recognize that once this is done, we need to take into consideration the social determinants of health, but also lately the legal determinants of health. For some of these interventions, border on law. They drive their power from existing law. So countries need to enact laws to give power to those who have to implement them, but also commercial determinants of health, the actions or inactions of commercial entities, industry that can either impact negatively or positively on the implementation of this. I would end, this is my, I think, last but one slide. I would end with this example from Ghana, where we try to put all that I have presented to you into a coherent bundle. We refer to that as a double duty food-based policy bundle as part of the Healthier Diet for Healthy Lives project, where we believe that once we have a science-based nutrient profiling model that underpins the implementation of the multiple policies I talked about that can improve food environment and eventually nutritional outcomes and therefore healthier lives. So HD for H Health project. What the project has done is support the Ghanaian government to develop the nutrient profiling system, which would be used as a basis for implementation of multiple policies. And there are four policies. All four policies have been developed. They are in draft, waiting for the Ghanaian government to sign, and then they will be implemented. The policies are national policy on front of pack nutrition labeling, national policy on public food procurement policy, national food marketing policy, and then national food-related fiscal policy for the promotion of healthy diet. So I hope I have used this time to present to you some of the approaches that you may be aware of or probably not aware of, and so you could use in your jurisdictions to assess food environment. But don't stop at the assessment. The ultimate goal is get them into policies and get the policies implemented. And of course, as part of food environment work, the policies got to be evaluated. And so those are even other aspects of methods or measures that are used in food environment work. I would yield here and over to you, Esther. Thank you.